Clean up on aisle 3. Hey folks, before we start the video, I want to make an announcement. The channel recently reached 500 subscribers, which is awesome. To celebrate, we're going to do a giveaway. Super Clean has agreed to give away some cleaning supplies to one lucky winner. If you want to enter the contest, you need to do 3 simple things. First, subscribe to the channel. Second, make sure the email in your profile is up to date so I can contact you if you win. And last but not least, leave a comment below. You can say whatever you want, it doesn't matter. If you do these things, you'll be automatically entered in the contest. Best of luck! Anyway, let's get back to the video. In the last video, I serviced the cooling system in the Basket Case BMW. In this video, we're focused on the steering system. Some of the power steering hoses are leaking, so I'm going to replace them. I'm also going to replace the steering fluid reservoir. And last but not least, I'm going to upgrade the power steering cooler. You may be wondering why I'm removing the whole front end just to service the steering components. First of all, that makes it easier to get at the power steering cooler. Plus, while I'm in there, I can remove the AC condenser. I deleted most of the AC system already, so the condenser is dead weight. Plus, removing the condenser will allow more airflow through the radiator. I'm going to mark these guys with a Sharpie marker around the edge. That way when I reinstall it, I'll be able to get it lined up correctly. Just like that. And by the way, here's the other side. I did this one already. Okay, you might be wondering why I took apart the whole front end of the car. There are a couple reasons. First of all, I want to get at the power steering cooler and the steering lines. Some of these lines are going to be replaced, and I'm also going to modify the power steering cooler to make it better. Also, if you remember, I deleted the rest of the AC system. This is a great time to remove the condenser, so I'm going to do that too. It looks like this plastic piece holds in the end of the condenser, so this probably has to come off. There's a T25 screw right here. And then the other side is pretty much the same story. There's a plastic bracket along the side and the T25 screw right there. On this side, there's also a release tab you have to undo, right here. There's also a plastic rivet in this side attaching the condenser to the plastic piece. Right in there. Man, that guy's a pain to get at too. By the way, here's that rivet I was talking about. Looks like everything is nice and loose. So let's pull out the condenser. I'm going to set you guys on a tripod so I have both hands free. Okay, the condenser is out. I have to admit, I was afraid the radiator might be disgusting, but it's actually not that bad. That said, I'll probably still give it a cleaning. Before we do any work on the steering, I first need to drain the power steering fluid. I'll do that from underneath. Okay, we're looking at the bottom of the power steering pump. This is the pressure line going out to the steering rack. That is the supply line coming down from the reservoir. I'm going to disconnect both of these and let the power steering fluid drain out. Also, I'm going to remove the cap off the reservoir to help it drain faster. So on the E46, the power steering reservoir has a filter built into it. I don't know if you can see it in there. There it is. The downside is, to replace the filter, you have to replace the entire reservoir. And that's what I'm doing now. The power steering reservoir has this big metal strap holding it in place. If you undo this screw with a 10mm wrench, it'll loosen this up so the reservoir can come out. It may be difficult to see with all the dirt and grime on that hose, but it has a quick release mechanism right there. I'll show you on the new hose what it looks like. This plastic part at the end is the quick release mechanism. What you do is you push in the plastic part like that, and that releases it. Then you can just pull the hose off. By the way, if you don't have the special tool for this, a crescent wrench works in a pinch. Okay, the reservoir is ready to come out. Let's see how much of a mess I can make. Clean up on aisle 3. Good thing I have some of this stuff. Here's the old power steering reservoir. If you look closely at the ends of the hoses, you can see why they were leaking. First of all, it was starting to come apart. Second of all, if you look really closely, you can see witness marks from the hose clamps. The clamps were actually eating into the hoses. This is part of the reason why I don't like worm drive clamps. I didn't film installation of the new hoses and reservoir because it's basically just the reverse of removal. However, I did have some difficulty getting the mounting bolt for the reservoir back in its place. I ended up using some pliers to squeeze the mounting bracket so I could get the bolt started. I also used some of the spring clamps that I scrounged from the salvage yard in the last video. I think they'll work better than the worm drive clamps. Anyway, let's talk about the power steering cooler upgrade. I grabbed a power steering cooler from a Ford pickup truck in the salvage yard. The E46 power steering cooler is basically just a loop of tubing, so this should be a nice upgrade. Since I plan to do some racing with the car, I think the power steering might need some extra cooling. Basically, I'm going to chop the end off the E46 steering cooler and attach the Ford unit on the end, like this. The Ford power steering cooler has hose barbs on it, but I'm not going to use hoses. I'm going to attach the Ford unit directly to the BMW unit with pipe fittings, so I used a hacksaw to cut off the hose barbs. There's actually not enough room for me to get the flare tool on there, so instead I'm going to use compression fittings. If you're not familiar with a compression fitting, it has three main parts. You've got the compression nut, which I just dropped. You have the collar, and then the fitting itself. So first you install the compression nut with the opening facing out that way. Then you slide on the collar, and then you slide on the fitting. And when you tighten the nut, what's going to happen is that collar inside is going to get sandwiched in between the fitting and the nut, and it's going to squeeze it, and that's going to seal the connection. It's also a good idea to make sure your hose bottoms out inside the fitting to make sure you get the best connection possible. I cut the BMW steering cooler with a hacksaw also. Then I test fitted the new power steering cooler setup into the car to make sure it fits. Unfortunately, I can't just attach these two pieces together and call it a day. That's because here in America, all of our plumbing fittings, including the ones in our cars, use the imperial measurement system. For example, the pipes on this power steering cooler are 3/8 inch diameter. However, the pipes on the BMW are 12 millimeter diameter. I doubt I'm going to find a 3/8 inch to 12 millimeter adapter. So what I did is I went to the hardware store and I got a 3/8 inch to a 1/2 inch adapter. The 1/2 inch side, of course, is slightly larger than 12 millimeter. It's actually 12.7. So this is going to be loose on the pipe. As a matter of fact, it's so loose it'll leak. So what do? Well, here's a hint. At the hardware store, I also found a piece of thin wall brass tubing. It's a 1/2 inch outside diameter. So this will fit the fitting perfectly. The inside diameter is just a tiny bit smaller than 12 millimeter. So it'll be an interference fit onto the pipe. But I think I have a solution for that. I can use a torch to heat up the tubing so it'll expand just enough to fit over that pipe. And then when it cools off, it'll be nice and tight and it won't leak. As a matter of fact, that's what I've done here. I did this off camera and it worked perfectly. So I'm going to try to do this to this one on camera so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Of course, now that the camera is running, it'll probably turn into a giant catastrophe. We'll see. Oh, I forgot to mention, I put a couple marks on the pipe. The first mark is 1 inch from the end. The second mark is 1.5 inches from the end. And I did that because after I put the pipe on, I can measure back and know where the end of the pipe is so I know where to cut it. Alright. Now this pipe is really thin wall, so it's going to cool down really fast. So I have to work quick. And there it is. That's on there really tight. Alright, that's not going anywhere. Alright, now I'll measure back 1.5 inches from this mark and cut it off, and it'll be good to go. And And there we have it. The power steering cooler is installed. Now we just need to fill up the system and bleed out the air and it should be good to go. Oh, but before I do that, I'm going to clean everything up to get rid of all the power steering fluid that leaked all over the place. Oops, I almost forgot. I need to secure that end of the power steering cooler. We'll just use a couple zip ties. I put a plastic bag over the intake so it wouldn't get water in there. And now let's clean it up. Okay, time to put everything back together. I don't want to bore you guys to death, so we're going to do a quick time lapse. Hope you enjoy the music. As you may know, the power steering in the E46 uses Dexron 3 ATF. Unfortunately, the closest thing I could find at the auto parts store was multi-purpose ATF. It claims to be compatible with Dexron 3, so hopefully this will work. Didn't spill a drop. Alright, we're going to run the engine a little bit to circulate the power steering fluid. We need to pull the steering wheel back and forth to help it circulate. It needs a little bit more. I don't see any leaks down here. I don't see any leaks here either. No leaks down here either. Just some water that hasn't evaporated yet. We can stick a fork in this video because it's done. The power steering project was a success. In the next video, we'll tackle another part of the car that needs attention, so stay tuned.